All right, good evening, everybody. It looks like the attendee count has slowed down, and so we'll go ahead and get started. On behalf of Bay City Public Schools, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you that just logged in, my name is Patrick Malley. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the district. I'm joined tonight by Shelly DuCharme, our Director of Elementary Education, as well as David Farley, our new Director of Online Education. And tonight, what we hope to do is to walk you through what we know so far about our learning about virtual education and our plans to expand that to all students in grades K through 12.
This is a virtual webinar format tonight for our presentation, and we are planning to keep microphones muted for just this reason, to hopefully eliminate connectivity issues. However, we are really interested in learning what questions you have and hopefully answering those questions with you as we go through the presentation tonight. So if you have a question, we would like for you to please add that in that Q&A option that you should see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I'll monitor those questions, and as Mr. Malley or Mr. Farley are presenting this evening, I will interrupt and add in so that they're sure to learn your questions and hopefully answer those.
I always like to start out conversations with parents or teachers or our community at large about what our goals for students are at Bay City Public Schools. We like to start with this to ground the work of all the conversations that we have about students to make sure that we're centered on what we're working towards. And at Bay City Public Schools at the elementary level, we're focused intensely on ensuring that every student leaves elementary with a strong academic foundation. And at the middle school level, we strive to build upon that academic foundation to ensure our students leave with tools for growth before entering high school. And then, of course, for our high school students, we want them to graduate having ownership of their future and striving towards their goals to head on their intended college or career pathway. It's with that we're obviously preparing for a fall that looks different than falls of the past. But while we're going to spend our night tonight talking primarily about our virtual education program that we're launching, I want to make sure that we state clearly that the district is planning for multiple scenarios that is grounded in face-to-face, in-person education. We believe strongly at Bay City Public Schools that our students need to continue learning, and we will do whatever is needed in order to comply with state mandates in order to keep children safe. But we really look forward to seeing students in our classrooms again. Everybody in the school community is preparing for face-to-face learning. And so while we're having this presentation tonight and talking about virtual education, for those of you that are in the audience that are interested in that for your child, we just want to make sure that we're really clear, because of all of the changes happening in our world right now, that we are preparing for face-to-face education in addition to this virtual option we're talking about tonight. In addition to that, we realize that some families may look for a more hybrid mix of face-to-face and virtual for their kids, and so we're providing that as well. Next, I want to introduce David Farley a bit more. David Farley, if you're not aware, is formerly the principal of Western Middle School, where he served in that position for 1 year. Prior to that, he has been a principal at the elementary level and, of course, also taught at the high school level. So we're happy to have him on our team helping us with this virtual education plan because he's got this experience at all levels and brings a wealth of knowledge to this experience. So, David, you want to talk to folks about the planning timeline you have in place?
Yeah, so the planning is really centered around starting with what we're doing right now. We, our first kind of approach right now is to make sure that we have some outreach to our community to let everyone know that this is an option for your child if you feel that in your family that it's the right option for you. It's not the only option, but it is one option that you can choose for your family. The other planning that we're doing right now and ending in June right now is that we are looking at continuing with the curriculum, looking at curriculum vendors, and just kind of setting the stage for us to move into July, where we're going to be looking at our teacher selection. So having teachers apply to be our virtual school teachers. and then selecting them and then getting them started in the virtual option. We get towards the end of July, we're going to be finalizing the curriculum options that we're going to have, the different plans and tools that students will be using, and starting to get the teachers trained and comfortable, familiar, ready to go for students with those curriculum tools. As we get into August, we're going to start online enrollment. So the enrollments for the virtual options, so the parents will be able to, if you decide that this is the right option for your child, that you'll be able to enroll your child in the virtual school, looking to get started on August 25th as that first day of school. Kind of some of the overall planning things that are kind of happening all the way through is thinking about what the physical locations of the virtual will be. And we'll talk about those physical locations later on. Thinking about policies and procedures. So planning some of the boring stuff, things like handbooks that they're boring, but extremely important because they really help us set the stage for what virtual is going to look like for our students. Thinking about procedures. So what does support for a student look like? What are the procedures for how a student might get support as they are either excelling, at a very accelerated pace, or they are struggling and require additional supports from a teacher. Putting those policies and procedures in place so that we can have those codified into some planning. And then a big one that I continue to get questions on is planning for those extracurriculars. We want to be able to offer the extracurricular activities that are associated with school. So planning for what those look like and what are the requirements and how do we make sure that students can participate in those extracurricular activities, because those are obviously an important part of being a student. I think one of the most important things that we're going to look at here is that all of our students in virtual will be supported by Bay City teachers. The second cornerstone of looking at virtual is we want to make sure that our teachers are able to support your students in some different ways. So the first thing would be that virtual offers students the opportunity to work on their own schedule. The idea that a student can work at any time. They can wake up at 5 a.m. or they can start work at they can start their classwork at 10 a.m. They can take a 2-hour break. The work is going to happen on their schedule, on your family schedule, and then it can happen any place. It can happen if you're taking a vacation. The learning doesn't have to stop. But then flexibility being offered by the fact that students can come into the building for the support as they need it or as they want it. So we're planning several different locations for student support throughout the district. So if your student is an elementary student, we are planning a support center at both Washington Elementary and at McAleer-Sodden Elementary. If it's a middle school student, we're planning at both middle schools, so at Handy and at Western. And then for high school students, we're going to have these student support centers at Western, at Central, and at Eastern. These support centers are designed for our students to be able to get with one of our Bay City teachers and receive the help that they need in a face-to-face format. So when we think about an elementary student and needing some help from a teacher, these support centers are going to be a place that we can schedule that you can schedule time with that teacher to go in and get that in-person help. Patrick talked earlier about how we believe that the face-to-face learning is kind of our bread and butter, and this offers us that opportunity to provide that same level of one-to-one or small group instruction in an in-person venue. For secondary students, as students are more independent, these support centers are going to both act as a place for them to get help from a Bay City teacher, but also an area for perhaps collaborative work amongst students. If there's a need for students to get together to be able to work on content or projects or activities, it'd be a place that they can come together and do that work. It could also just be a place that the student needs somewhere else to go quiet and to be comfortable, and have a nice place, a nice place for them to work on their information while having a teacher close by for when they need that help. And thinking about that, these are not going to be a traditional classroom, but they are going to be specifically designed to allow many different options of learning and work to happen during their time there.
I just want to add, David, that a lot of our conversations that we've had with our teachers, Bay City Public Schools and administrators who have been helping to think about this work, is that while a lot of the work that students will be doing will be at home, we know that some aspects of curriculum are challenging. We know that sometimes students will fall behind, and so having a space in our buildings where we can facilitate that contact in a safe manner is needed for the long-term planning of this virtual program. Obviously, if a student has less needs for coming into the building to receive support, or if they're moving along at an accelerated path, then their use of these support centers may differ based upon their individual pathway. But for planning purposes, we just want you to know that we're thinking strategically about where these locations should be, so that way students have access to them as we plan forward.
So when we think about virtual, one of the most important parts that will make it successful is the idea that this is not it doesn't have to be a fully independent thing, but it really requires a partnership between us as Bay City Schools and you at home. So the idea is that we're creating this it's going to be a partnership for success. And that partnership starts with this being a very parent-directed opportunity. So the parents are really are going to control the environment in the home. Playing a very large role when you have that your student is learning online, and you are providing that support in the house and providing those opportunities for students to be able to get their work done, and providing schedules and providing motivation, but then really being able to choose the idea that you get to reinforce your family values and those values of education. And then on our end, we're going to provide the teachers to support your students through that online coursework. So it's really going to be, some of the terms that we've thrown around is that, like, the people at home are almost like the learning coach. When your student's at home, an elementary student is going to need someone who can help guide that student in the home through the work that the teacher's providing. And then the teachers will provide the parents with that support when a parent needs it, or when the student needs to come in to get that support. At the secondary level, the parents are really going to have a crucial role in making sure that the student is staying on task when in the home. So if the student says that if your child says that they're going to do their work between 8 and 10, and then 11 and 1, thinking about at home, what are our family procedures or our family processes to make sure that the students are staying on task. And then when we as a school, we start seeing maybe that those processes aren't, that the students not following through, then that's when we will be able to support you in coming up with either new process at home, or we will start inviting that student into the support centers to make sure that they are able to be supported through their learning. So really a true connection between school and home.
So David, a question Jody is asking relates to the support centers.
Okay.
And Jody is asking if those support centers will require a scheduled time for students. So maybe you can share what we're thinking at each level, what we're thinking right now.
Yep. So some of these things are subject to change as we learn more, and as we find out how many students are going to be enrolled in virtual. Definitely at the elementary level, we are definitely thinking that these support centers should be scheduled, with the teacher, so that we don't have, to make sure that we have maybe 2 teachers or 1 or 2 teachers, supporting that drop-in center at that time. We don't want to have an overabundance of students that wouldn't be able to get the support they needed at that time. So thinking about having a very easy way of scheduling a time with a teacher. but making sure that we can make sure that your student, when they show up, can get the appropriate attention that they need during that time. At the secondary level, we think that it can, we will still want to schedule when something's really needed. Booking an appointment with that teacher will be important to say, hey, like, I definitely know that I need help in this area with that teacher. But those drop-in centers can be a little more open, because, maybe a student just needs, maybe your child just needs time to be somewhere else and to be able to get the work done. Or when we see these drop-in centers, we're hoping to kind of build them in a way that's going to offer a collaborative experience, and offer a different opportunity, a different place to learn, and then to get that same level of face-to-face. So will it always need to be scheduled? Not necessarily, but we're leaning towards that definitely in the elementary.
Yeah, the more I've listened to our team talk about it, David, the more I've started to think about the idea of providing support that's appropriate for the age level, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, for 11th and 12th graders, it's a little easier for us to imagine a student support center where students are literally dropping in because they're looking for a more focused place to do their work. Where at the elementary level, we think that the teacher student work is going to have to be more intentional. And so as the kids get younger, we're thinking we're going to need more structure and planning.
And if I may, just really quickly, I'd like to just address Mary's question about asking why a particular school would not be a support center. And Mary, to answer that, we're looking for distribution throughout the district so that there's a close support center no matter where in the district families live. And this is our best thinking right now. I don't know that we've set in stone that these will be the support centers. We may have a need to add at a later date as well.
All right. So we kind of threw this idea as far as sharing this tentative day in the life of a virtual student in late. It kind of came up through conversations both with parents that were asking questions, and then with our task force that we've, through questions that they were getting. So my disclaimer is that this is very tentative, and this, it'll vary based on which curriculum tools that we use, and it'll vary based on what age your student is and what their level is. But the idea is that the content our classes they'll obviously utilize technology to deliver instruction either via a text, video, online activities, through conferencing, and that these activities will vary in their mix of online and offline time. An elementary student will not, we don't anticipate an elementary student spending their entire 7 to 8 hour day on their Chromebook, but rather there's going to be a mix of activities that they will be doing offline, and then then providing either the results or just doing practice on their own, and then moving to the instruction via their computer. But it's not going to be all online, because that would not be, we don't say that would be the most appropriate way for us to deliver that instruction. So thinking at the elementary level, so this this chart here was just taken directly from one of the curriculum vendors that we are considering. So in a day, an elementary student, we would be looking at an elementary student spending right around an hour in their language arts time, similar to what they would be doing in a regular classroom. In math, 45 minutes to 60 minutes in their on their work, and this is both online and offline. This is the combination of a total amount of time that they are doing. Social studies, 30 to 45 minutes, and science, 30 to 45 minutes. So very similar to what students would be doing in the classroom. And then thinking about the 30 to 45 minutes, a couple times a week, looking at some of those elective times, which is similar to what they would be doing in a classroom. At the secondary, it'll just kind of a very similar answer. The base, when I say base, that means the I don't want to say normal, but the kind of the base amount that they will be spending in the course will be similar to a face-to-face. So an hour to an hour and a half per class per day. on their coursework. That, those numbers will get longer when you factor in either, additional supports that might be needed, or if there's, if there's some struggling happening, that the student might need, a little extra support to get them to the level of where they're looking at. And we just know that students work at different paces naturally. So if a student might be able to do it faster than an hour, depending on their pace. But we kind of just look at it being about an hour to an hour and a half per day per class. It's probably some days much shorter, some days much longer, but that's what we're tentatively is what we expect, and that's similar to what other virtual schools would be looking at for their timing.
David, this might not be a bad time to ask a question that's come up quite a bit in our planning. How will this look different than the remote learning that we went through at the end of last school year?
So I think, the remote learning that we finished with last year was, number one, it wasn't necessarily new learning. It was learning to make sure that our students didn't fall behind. But we wanted to make sure that our students were keeping pace, but that they weren't, that we couldn't expect in an emergency crisis situation that we would expect all students to learn the material. It'll be a far more intensive approach to learning than we had during COVID. It's going to be a new learning, and it will be a more time than they would have spent during the last few months. So if you're expecting it to look similar, the delivery is theoretically similar, but the intensity of the learning is going to be upped.
Sure. Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is that choosing this path of virtual education will set your child on a more intentional path of virtual education, as opposed to being forced into it at the end of last year. It was different in terms of expectations that we were placing on students. And so, ensuring growth through a virtual delivery requires a tremendous commitment. So I appreciate you talking about that a little bit.
An advantage to virtual school really is the ability to personalize supports for students. So BCPS Virtual will be fully equipped with teachers that are qualified and able to meet a variety of needs of our students. Staff will be working closely with parents of students in needs of accommodations to ensure individualized education plans, 504 plans, elementary IRIP plans, making sure that all of those goals and plans are met. Any student that is currently on some type of educational plan wishing to transition to virtual will require a meeting with parents and the educational team at the school to review and revise the current plan to accommodate for a virtual setting. As Mr. Farley mentioned, this virtual schooling really requires a commitment from families. And so we are really wanting to work with families to ensure that if your child is on some type of educational plan, that we work together to decide or help you decide if virtual is the best learning environment for your child. So that is similar to the gifted and talented conversation. High achieving students can be challenged in a virtual setting. Our teachers will have the ability to accelerate students, or students can move quicker through courses. Teachers will be able to customize or adjust lessons to challenge students. However, it's really important that we know or share with you that our elementary gifted and talented program will continue to be offered at Kolb Elementary. That program is specifically geared to fully develop intellectual and creative abilities of our academically gifted learners. So at this time, we are not planning to prepare an official gifted and talented virtual program, while the virtual program does allow for us to challenge students that are in need of those extensions. So our staff is really eager to discuss options and really to support families in making decisions and working through the process as to which is the best environment for your child.
All right, next steps as we close out and answer any last questions that you have is that obviously, as David mentioned, we're excited to select a group of virtual education teachers who will help David lead this effort into virtual education for the district. We will continue preparing our virtual student support centers. David has started meeting with principals at some of the locations we talked about, and we'll continue doing that work throughout the summer. We will continue looking at different curriculum options for online delivery and working with our Office of Student Services on setting up enrollment. Our goal is, as David mentioned at the start, is to have enrollment open to folks in early August. And then, of course, we've created the landing page at bcschools.online where we've added some early information for you all about our efforts. We plan to continue updating that page as information comes available. Our next webinar is on July 21st at 7 p.m. But between now and then, we highly encourage you to follow along on the website or on social media as we update as plans develop.